Hey there, I'm Neil. My pronouns are he, him, and I'm the host and producer of Pause and Rewind, the podcast that chats to changemakers, thought leaders and role models who all share a common goal. They're striving to make the world a more inclusive place. And, let's face it, we need it. Each guest has a unique story when it comes to doing their thing, and we often know who people are in the now, but how much do we really know about them? Pause and Rewind takes a moment to explore the experiences, realisations and relationships in my guest's life that led them to where and who they are now, because everyone loves an origin story. We'll dive into tales, anecdotes and a little of what makes our guest tick. So whether you're here for insights or inspo or simply want to know about your heroes, this podcast is for you. You might never know someone's story, but if you pay attention, you'll hear it, you'll see it and you'll feel it. So, are you ready to pause and rewind? Hey there, Kamran. Welcome to Pause and Rewind. It's season 5, and I'm so grateful to have you here.
Oh, thanks for having me.
This is our first time that we get to sit and have a proper chat.
I know. We've been following each other, and I've been watching you and your adorable little pug for ages, so I'm glad we're finally getting to talk.
Absolutely. For those listening, we have just had a pug meetup before we hit record. I know Cam's two fur babies, and mine was on camera shortly before he went and pooped on the stairs. So the joys of pug dad life, right?
Exactly.
Cam, I'm going to start with a question that I tend to kick off the podcast with, and that is, what does the world look like for Kamran Khan right now?
So at the moment, I am a project and change consultant by my career. So I've worked in lots of different places, mostly in the public sector. So I'm currently working as a project lead for a HIV prevention, a PrEP project across 3 sexual health services in Liverpool, Sussex, and Brighton and Hove. It's funded by the Elton John AIDS Foundation, and it's an 18-month project to help with the government's Towards Zero 2030 campaign, which is the campaign to bring HIV transmissions to zero by 2030. And so obviously we know that in order for us to get to zero, we have to now work on all of the nuances. Majority of transmission is increasing, or it's generally decreasing, but the areas that are slower to decrease is amongst heterosexuals, it's amongst certain cultural groups, and it's mostly down to messaging not being nuanced to different people and different ways of living. And this is what this project's focused on. So it just involves having to do lots of community engagement and then working with existing pathways within sexual health services and everything. So yeah, it's really exciting. We're 6 months in to the 18-month project, so we're starting to see some of the things that we've put live come to fruition. So it's fantastic and exciting.
It sounds really cool. And a whole year to go and already kind of seeing results as well. And also, obviously, so a role like this puts all of your skills to use around kind of like advocacy, campaigning, community, doesn't it?
Yes, yeah, it does. It's definitely bringing together, the nuts and bolts, what most people would think is very boring, the project management, the sort of making sure things work and just driving a project from an idea to completion, but also bringing together the elements of EDI that I've kind of been part of for so many years. I'm also a volunteer director at Pride in Education. You've already interviewed our founder, Leila Medtui, so I work very, very closely with Leila. She's incredible. And it's about a lot of community engagement and embedding inclusive education, LGBT education across the curriculum. So a lot of the work from that and a lot of the previous work that I've been doing in other jobs within the charity sector has all kind of, it feels like it's all come together at this point. So yeah, professionally and personally kind of come together in one job.
I think that's when you work in the sectors that we work in, and when there's anything involved in kind of inclusion, belonging, equality, there does tend to be that bridge of you bridge all of your skills together. You do automatically become a project manager. And I find that there's just so much overlap in what we do, from our volunteering roles to our professional roles to how we show up personally as well.
Yeah, without a doubt. And I think this is probably the first time where a lot of that has kind of, because of the job and because of what it wants, has all kind of overlapped into one. But it has happened sort of organically in lots of different places. And definitely with Pride in Education, the work we do there, we're having to put on so many hats and just all get stuck in and just get things done, because we're all volunteers and we all bring different kind of expertise together. So yeah, no, totally agree.
Yeah, we're going to jump into your story, but that volunteer mindset is something, Nancy was my first guest for season 5, and we talked about mine and Nancy's mutual love of volunteering as well. Is that something that's always been a passion of yours?
Yeah, it really has been. With obviously Pride in Education is probably the biggest kind of volunteer job that I do. But I've done other things in the past, and I think it just comes from being someone who just wants to. I kind of when someone asks me like for the short version of who I am, I always say I'm a nobody, but I just want good things to happen in the world. And so you do that in whatever way you feel you can. And I've spent so long wanting to be in the charity or the NGO sector in some ways. And that didn't really, I mean, we might get into it, but it didn't really go in the direction that I wanted. So I went into this quite on paper, quite mediocre sort of project management job to pay my bills and everything. But actually it was my way in to help organizations and everything. So through that, I was able to volunteer for different organizations and offer my sort of expertise in different ways.
I think that a lot of us find our ways into this in quite obscure ways. Like mine is through event management. So I've been in the events industry for 20 years, but now kind of sit across events and EDI. I guess, are you happy with where it's at now, despite it not being the route that you originally thought?
Again, like I think what will become quite apparent is just youth and being a bit naive about how things happen and how you get to where you need to get to. But now, yeah, definitely, like I've got to the place where I've wanted to get to or will get to, but with a lot more clarity on who I am, what I like, what I don't like, what my boundaries are, who I would want to work with, who I wouldn't, all these kind of things. I think coming round it to a place where that gives me so much joy and passion, but knowing that I've got all these sort of layers to me like an onion, I think for me, I'm probably, it's happened, the route has happened because it's had to go on that kind of journey to get to where I am now. So without a doubt, yeah.
Hard relate. I often say to people the idea of a 5-year or 10-year plan that I actually stick to is quite laughable. Like I've got here in a very haphazard way, but I'm here and I'm where I'm meant to be. But it definitely wasn't the plan or the dream.
Yeah, without a doubt.
Yeah. We jumped straight into work talk. We didn't talk about kind of like where things are for you personally now. I guess kind of like amidst the backdrop of everything that you do, what does your personal life look like? And how do you take care of yourself against the backdrop of quite, anti-DEI sentiment, everything that we're facing in the world that impacts what we do? Yeah, shine a bit of light on that side of things.
Yeah, I mean, so other than talking about our pugs, I've got two, who I obsess over. Like I think having 2 dogs that force you into a bit of a routine that gets you out, especially when you're not feeling like you want to do anything at all, I think has been such a positive thing for me. They bring me a lot of joy and I love them to pieces. So I think that's one humongous part of my life. But also I'm just so fortunate, that I have a really solid network of friends and family, that I can rely on, and when I've had to, they've always been there for me. And obviously it's mutual and it's unconditional, I think, with a lot of my close friends. And so, yeah, for me, I think it's that. And I think it's been hard because I think definitely in the last few years, especially when you're trying to get on with your job and you're being bombarded with such awful things happening in the world, how do you switch off? And for me, it's like, you can bring yourself to work, but you're not going to bring your best self to work after logging on and seeing some atrocious things, especially with the genocide that we've been having to see since 2023. It's hard, and then trying to get on with your life but feel guilty when you are doing other things. And I think it's getting to that point where you have to say that actually, I am living in a very privileged position being here, and the best thing I can do is advocate and use my platform here in what seems like a slightly more open country where I can speak my mind a little bit more, although that's a bit debatable and laughable in some areas. But, in order for me to do that, I need to have some time to enjoy life as well, because then that brings the best out in me to be able to do those things in the best way possible. So yeah, I'm lucky, and life for me is in a much better place than it was a few years ago, where you'd just be constantly doom scrolling and just thinking, why is no one listening? Why is no one doing anything? And so yeah, so I think now it's getting to that balance, and then obviously I've got my partner who I couldn't do anything without, really, like just my rock, and just so supportive in so many different ways.
It sounds beautiful. I often talk about, we have to tap it. We have to find the joy, because otherwise, if we
Yeah,
can't find the joy, we can't really show up for ourselves to tackle the big stuff.
totally. And it's all about community. And
Mm.
I think we've been lied to in terms of what a successful life looks like
Right.
for us, And for me, it's community, and it's understanding that we all have that right to tap out, because there's other people in that community that will continue advocating, and likewise, someone else needs to tap out, we'll continue doing things, and we shouldn't feel guilty when we need to do that, because, our whole existence as human beings has been because of community, and not because we amass our own wealth and we buy our own house, and we have this nuclear family and everything, where everything has to be contained in this kind of way of living. And I think for me that's where my mind is now, and I think opening up to that is what's helped me to accept that life is for enjoying, but life is for making sure that everyone has the right to enjoy their life as well. So yeah.
Yeah. And I guess like it's also being able to take the time to find your voice in that as well. Like, and being able
Yeah.
to recognize your privilege, and to recognize the fact that you can make a difference, even if it is just showing up to a
Yeah.
protest or speaking out on social media. Like, I think everyone comes to understand their own power in their own time.
Totally. There's no fixed formula for it whatsoever. Even if it's you having a conversation outside of this digital world that we're all obsessed with, it's all part of a whole network of trying to make this world a much better place. So absolutely, it doesn't matter how it looks, as long as we're all trying to do something. I think that's a beautiful thing.
I wouldn't be
Mm.
the person I am without certainly the activists and the campaigners I know, but also the trans community. Also getting involved in events such as UK Black Pride, and challenging my own biases as well. It's to completely change who I am as a person. The world of DEI changed me as a person.
Totally agree, and I think it's what's important there is being comfortable with that discomfort. As silly as
Yeah.
that sounds. But, I think a lot of times with a lot of the DEI work that I've done in the past, when you go into those areas where there's discomfort, it's usually those at the top that just want to put an end to it and say, enough now, I'm uncomfortable. And then obviously when you're challenging, well, why are you uncomfortable? And actually this is where potentially the magic can happen, and where we can make a lot of meaningful change, rather than tick box, we did this thing and 10 years later we'll do this thing again, and we'll do it again, and at the expense of someone losing their life or something that then sparks a global movement and things. So for me, yeah, absolutely, it's being comfortable with that discomfort, and like you said, it's we all have privilege, and we all have to make sure that we use that in some way to amplify or just advocate for other people, rather than kind of use it as a way to kind of end conversations about it. So yeah, I equally have learned so much from the trans community, and just intersectionality, accessibility, and just very, very, very different people living very different lives. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, one of my go-to sayings at working in DI is get comfortable with being uncomfortable, and it's the only
Yeah.
way that you're
Yeah.
ever gonna change your own heart and minds, and that of others as well. When it comes to DEI, obviously there's loads of talk over the recent years about DEI being dead, and DEI needs to needs to kick up the arse and such. Where are you sitting with it now?
I very much am comfortable with doing it from the outside. I think I'd done it for a very long time in organizations, and this is by no means am I criticizing anyone who is in a DEI capacity, because obviously organizations need their internal DEI structures for various reasons. But I feel when you're trying to lead and deliver a strategy that's looking at inclusion, you really need someone external to hold that mirror up to an organization and kind of say that some things aren't good and some things need to change. I feel when you're an extension of the organization delivering DEI on a strategic level, you're kind of it's kind of who are you representing? Are you representing the organization, or are you representing the workforce? And I found, especially in two particular jobs that I've had, it was very much, you're employed by us, so we do expect you to be a voice for the organization and the organization's aims and everything. And I'm like, well, yes, but the positions that I'm in, I represent the workforce as well, and the workforce is traumatized for whatever reasons that we're going into. And the work that I'm commissioning is supposed to address a lot of these of all these. You probably went through it. I went through it. All these listening circles and all these things that people were doing that did make me very, what's the word? Just very ambivalent to a lot of these things that were emerging out of EDI. I was just kind of, to what end are you doing all of this? Like, to what end are you doing these listening circles? Are you doing the you said we did, all these kind of things? How many of these things are we going to do before you actually do the work that needs to be done? I'm not interested in just doing a lot of these things that just feels like it's rinsing and repeating, and actually is making you look good because you can put a statement on your website to say we're committed to anti-racism, we're committed to trans inclusion, we're committed to this, but actually it doesn't play out because your staff don't feel that. And so for me, stepping outside and then doing work with organizations did help me, because I was able to be a little bit more blunt, or continue to be blunt, and say that these things need to change and this is what I think you need to do. But have organizations that are a bit more bold, that are a bit happier to listen. So as much as I feel EDI got a rattling for the wrong reasons, because it came from the wrong people and for the wrong intentions, I feel like there are some truths in the sense that in some places, in some pockets of organisations, DEI has become a bit of an easy thing for people to say, oh, well, we've got a EDI strategy, we've got this and got that. But when you actually look at it, there's no substance at all. So, yeah, it was only a matter of time before people say, actually, we're putting money at this and nothing's coming out of it.
Yeah, I sit in a similar vein of being that external voice a lot of the times.
Yeah.
And you're right. Like, and sometimes the internal staff are so grateful for that external voice that just says it how it is. Yeah. And I think one thing about DEI needing to move on is that I think there's so many people traded off solely lived experience for such a long time without the strategy and the expertise behind it, and the stringent measures to literally measure, validate, act on what was being.
Yeah. No, I absolutely agree.
Yeah. Cam, I'm so excited to dive into your origin story and move away from talking all things shop. With that, are you ready to pause and rewind?
Yeah, let's do it.
Take me back. Tell me all about little Cam.
So, I mean, I love this question because I got to kind of really, really go back and kind of like think, okay, how old was I then? And then just try and see, do I have an earlier memory from it? So for me, like, it was a mix of so many things. I think I was, again, just to talk about, being so privileged, for me being a kid growing up in North London, I had two parents. My mum is Chinese from Malaysia, my dad's Pakistani. They came over to work in the NHS in the late 60s and 70s. So by the time I was born in the mid 80s, I had a seemingly quite comfortable, sheltered life that they had kind of really worked hard at. So, we lived in a pretty nice area in North London. And, I think for me, the main thing that came to light a lot later was just, just how hard they worked to do that, to the detriment of their relationship, to be honest. I think, my mum would be doing the day shifts. She'd be working in a nursing home in the day, and then my dad would do the night shifts. And so they were very much passing ships. And then obviously there's all these things that I remember that were all the additional jobs that they did to earn extra money, just to make sure that they could give us that head start. And I think that's the kind of immigrant family, story, that they just want the best for you and they're willing to sacrifice so much. So we didn't feel it. Me and my brother never really felt it. But when I asked that question, because I had to do a project at university that really was looking at home and home life, it was really when they started talking about how much they did and how much they worried about things. But it never was something that they presented to me and my brother, and we just kind of blissfully went through our childhood, just doing things that every kid was doing. So, and my mum, she made me do piano lessons and swimming, and they were, like they were giving us, trying to get us to kind of just have a head start in lots of different things. And so I obviously remember a lot of that revolved around, all these different activities that we'd be doing. My dad was trying to raise us. I was raised with both religions when I was young. My mum was a Baha'i. My dad was Muslim, and when we were young, we were brought up with both. But there was always this intention that I would be raised Muslim. So my mum asked the question, like, either you raise him as Muslim or I'll bring him closer into the Baha'i faith. So my dad obviously freaked out and took me to the madrasa, and I was having Friday and Saturday school at the mosque and everything. So for me, my youth was very much very, very busy, very active. Every evening there seemed to be something. If it wasn't religious, like Islamic education or Arabic school, it would be piano lesson or swimming. So yeah, very, very, very busy life, but yeah, seemingly a happy one when I was very, very young.
Did you enjoy it?
I think, well, I didn't enjoy religious school. I didn't enjoy my Saturday, which then became Sunday. I didn't enjoy that at all. I think that's where I kind of realized I'm very inquisitive, and I like to ask. And I think in a lot of cases, we'd be taught teachings, and things, and this is how we do it, and this is how it's supposed to be, and I never really liked the way that some of the reasoning was being given, and I always used to be the one that goes why and why, and then the teachers would just be like, because it is, and it's also a sin to keep asking questions, and I'd be like, oh God, okay. So I'd just shut my mouth and just get on with it, but just know that I always knew that this isn't landing with me, but religion was such a big kind of influence in my life, especially my younger days. It was nothing that I was going to question, but I was questioning it, but very, very much internally, and there would be too much shame if I was to kind of bring that out to my dad. But I did enjoy, all the other things. I mean, my mum wanted me to learn a musical instrument because she always wanted to, and so I think it was just, by proxy, she was kind of getting me and my brother to do something that she wanted to do, and so I really enjoyed that much. My dad didn't. There were lots of things in our household and life that was very much, we did it, but it was just kind of tolerated, and there was always this conflict between this growing up in a multi-religious but in a multicultural and British household where I'd want to put posters up, but my dad wouldn't let me put posters up. But and we had a piano, we had pictures of us as family, and whenever we had our religious madrasa teacher come over on the Friday night, he would always comment, you shouldn't be having pianos in your house, you shouldn't be having pictures in your house, and things like that. So there was always this in the background that we're a bit of a rebel family, but then sometimes my dad would agree with that anyway, and my mum never, she never converted to Islam. So there was always this kind of bubbling conflict that became something a lot bigger, in my later sort of childhood. But in my earlier childhood, it was just something that we all just lived with and got on. And for me, when I look back, I think, well, I was exposed to so many different things. And, from my dad taping, I don't know, but on Channel 4 at night, they would have a lot of cultural things that, you just record and you'd watch later. And my dad would record all the Qawwali music, which is the religious, it's beautiful music. And Nusrat Fateh Ali Khan is one of the biggest, renowned Qawwali singers. And that would always be playing and alongside everything else that we'd be doing. So, I really love all of that. But yeah, the one thing I didn't enjoy was getting up on a Saturday and having to trek to Regent's Park Mosque to do these classes that I never enjoyed. So yeah.
And I imagine that being able to go back and have those conversations with your parents about the upbringing, would be a conflict or their experiences of kind of like, being immigrants and that experience of sacrifice. That's something that some people don't get to do with their parents. So was it enlightening to be able to have those conversations?
Yeah, it was very lucky because it was a uni project. So I just thought, well, I'm gonna have to speak to my parents.
Yeah.
And both my parents have passed away now. So I think about it, and I think it's one of the greatest gifts that uni gave me was that course, that module where I was able to record them, and I've still got the audio
Oh,
of
that's
them
beautiful.
talking about it. And it was really lovely because they were able to really kind of delve in themselves into, where they'd come from, in their life, and what happened in Pakistan and Malaysia that dictated to them that they had to make some big decisions and come to the UK to work, because there wasn't much for them in Pakistan and Malaysia for their respective reasons. But yeah, I think for me, for them, it was an opportunity to look at a lot of the sacrifices that they made for me and my brother, but then also to see where me and my brother had got to because of those sacrifices, but also to be realistic about it, to say that actually there was some negatives as much as positives, and but I don't want to be toxically positive to say, they sacrificed so much for us.
Right.
That sacrifice came at a lot of pressure, and that pressure manifested in obviously very, very different ways, from the religious pressure to the pressure to strive to do well at school and only get the top grades and only do well and all of that. I mean, it's in the whole scheme of things, it's not that bad, but it's a lot of pressure that you're carrying as an immigrant child, because you're always getting the conversation. I mean, I'm sure many people will have had that conversation with their parents, talking about how much was in their pocket when they came to the UK. My dad, depending on how hard hitting he wanted the conversation to be, he'll be like, he came to the country with £10 or 1 pence or 10 pence, or the amount always changed. And I always used to, in my later years, I'd tell him, I was like, can you fix it, please? And the amount keeps changing. So yeah, it was really good to be able to just reflect from a neutral position of the module and what the module was asking me to get from my parents.
Beautiful to have had that opportunity. I just don't think that people take, I know that I certainly don't with my dad, like the opportunity to sit and talk about stuff. So thinking about your parents, is there a favourite anecdote that they told you about yourself growing up?
They always said I was always a bit of a rebel in terms of questioning authority and things, and my dad in particular, he told me about how frustrating it was to take me to so every Thursday evening when I was really young, we used to go to these gatherings called Usra, and they were very sort of kind of really lovely evenings of chanting, of Islamic. It's closer to Sufi teachings, and it's very much, you're not really reciting anything from the Quran or anything, you're just reciting a prayer, but you're reciting it over and over again, so it gets quite meditative, and it's really just beautiful and everything. And when I look back, it's like they were really beautiful nights. They had to stop because September 11th happened, and these nights then started to get, the police used to check up to see if these were the usual, a load of brown people getting in a room, congregating. That can only be for one thing, back then and still now. In those events, men were in one room and women were in another room, and we never hosted in our house because of all those issues with us having a piano and having pictures of us and everything. My dad was like, we're not doing it at our place, but we did it at my friend's place. We would always be in the kitchen, and we'll be getting the food ready to give to both the women's room and the men's room. And there was always this thing that you have to serve the men first. And I was just like, I'm not. I was like, you've cooked. It should go, and the women have been helping prepare. Therefore, the women should eat first. And I remember when they kept saying, no, you have to go to the men's room first. So I just took the plate and I just took it into the women's room and I just put it in there. I was like, I'm not having any of this. And I remember because then she told my dad, and then my dad was just like, can you just not do this? And I said, no, I'm never going to stop doing this kind of stuff because it's not fair.
Right.
And I remember my dad saying that because he was just like, it was coming from a position of don't shame me in these gatherings. But my mum was always my biggest champion in that area. She was like, no, keep doing that kind of stuff because
I love that.
That's good.
And I guess that I mean, that essence of being a rebel, but also that insistence on fairness, shows up in the Cam that everyone knows now.
I like to think that, and I think back then it was a sense of justice, and I think it's just knowing what's right or wrong, and I think it's helpful, and I think that does come down to being in this multi household of so many different things, where I'm seeing and hearing so many different things, and I'm hearing my mum's perspective and my dad's perspective, and then like really then from a very young age having that sense of what is right and wrong. So yeah, I mean, as minor as it was with who gets to eat first, it was actually quite a major thing, to be honest.
Those early signs. Talk to me about that teenage Cam.
That move from primary to secondary was a big change to who I was as a person. in primary school, I was very outgoing. I was this kind of really annoying teacher's pet. I was class representative and all these kind of things, and was in this kind of real flow of really knowing who I was as a child. Going into secondary school, I went to boys' school. And on my first day, I remember someone mimicking my voice when we were doing the register. And I think from that day onwards, I was just like, we're just going to push the mute button on you and you're just going to stay quiet for most of secondary school. So for me, most of my secondary school years was just keeping my head down, getting on with school. I mean, thankfully or whatever, I just, got on with all the subjects that I was doing. I was getting good grades and I was just carrying on, and in my head, keeping the people who needed to be happy, and just drowning out the noise of people who are, just mimicking me for the sake of it because they want to. And so for a lot of times it was very, very insular and burying a lot of things. But in terms of, like journey with identity, it was always something that was bubbling. And it didn't really, but I think because of so many things, like especially being in a household where I'd hear, dad and my dad's friends would say certain things that would make me like, well, there is no point me even mentioning anything about my sexuality. I was really able to put that in a big box and put it, well away from me, and not really look at it until I was a lot older, in my later teens. What was very prominent for me was, as I mentioned before, was September the 11th. And when that happened, it really was the first time that I viewed or was aware of where I stood or how society perceived me, as someone with a Muslim name, Muslim surname, who practices the religion, but, is not viewed in the same way as everyone else. So I think that's where I started to get a real sense of this. There's this injustice, and it's boiling down to the color of your skin and the religion that you're practicing. I stopped wearing my shalwar kameez to go to the mosque on Friday because people would scream whatever out, like when I'm walking to the mosque. And so I just had this real sense of this is who I am. And my dad changed a lot, then became a lot more paranoid. Like my brother, during the Iraq War, went on the Stop the War Coalition marches, and would come home with the Palestinian flag, and my dad would freak out, because he'd just be like, do you not realize what might happen with all of this? And, my brother, he was detained in America. He was just on transit home from Mexico, and, he was detained for like 36 hours, and then I was detained for 3 hours. And so it was really just being aware that society doesn't see you as equal. And it's not just in the UK, it's just, anywhere in the West where you're going, you're gonna be treated very differently. So that became very, very apparent for me, and obviously manifested in quite horrible ways. But sexuality, just became a much more obvious thing for me when I was getting into my later teens, so 16, 17. And I guess I was able to navigate it in the way that people like me who just have to just keep it so concealed did. You'd live it out in different places, and thank God the internet was starting up when I was a teenager. Wow. So we had all these things that I had at my fingertips, chat rooms. There was, I don't know if remember Habbo Hotel. You'd go into this virtual hotel and you'd just talk to people, and I was able to live something through there. And then playing The Sims. My God, The Sims was incredible. Just really just creating these families and existences, like of a life that you would love to lead, but you can't, or you've convinced yourself that you can't. But yeah, it became a much more thing. It became a thing that I couldn't really contain. And I remember my mum asked me once, but I wasn't ready. I think I was about 15 at the time, because someone asked her, and she did say to me, like, if you are, it doesn't matter. Like, it doesn't matter to me at all if you are. I love you, whatever. But I just was not. I was so far in. I was just like, no, you got nothing to worry about. It's all good. And so I really kept it in until I just thought, I can't really conceal this anymore because people were asking too many questions. And so, I I didn't like, I came out very, very late. I came out way into my 20s, but I came out a few times to a few people when I was 17, 18, you know, to people, like to one or two people at school, and then to a few people at uni. But was I controlled that. I made sure that I did, but it did mean that I was quite withdrawn, quite insular. Didn't make many friends at secondary school. So yeah, teenage years were difficult because there were just so many things just swirling around in my head, and having to negotiate all of that as part of my identity, and then throw in Islamophobia and racism on top of that.
We're a couple of decades on from obviously 11th September and that experience. And I guess I wonder, having lived through that back then and then seeing what we're seeing now, and including that experience of having to hide who you are and put it in a box and put it to one side, do you think much has changed in that time? Because we're seeing so much of that still.
Yeah. I don't feel much has changed in terms of people's acceptance of just let people be, you know, like just let people live and let people be who they want to be. You see it obviously with the record amount of Islamophobia, record amount of anti-Semitism, see transphobia, the anti-immigration sentiment, but you see that they're becoming a little bit more savvy about how they present it to people. You know, like the anti-immigration is about protecting women and girls. You know, anti-trans is about women's safety. You know, you see the stopping the boats. It's all about racism. It's all about racism and Islamophobia, because you then see the hypocrisy of how they talk about the war in Ukraine, you know, versus, you know, the small boats and what's happening in Palestine. So for me, it's like, no, you can dress it up however you want. It's still ugly. It's still really, really ugly, and it hasn't changed. We're still considered second class, and you hear these things coming through every now and then. You hear it, like a few weeks ago. I can't remember which Reform MP was talking about Asians and Black people. There's too many of us on adverts. You know, like how dare we be the face of selling products? You know, like how dare we be part of some capitalist company? The audacity. You're seeing your cereal being presented to you by a multiracial family or a Black family or something. You know, so it's just things like that, and that not being challenged properly. Like you hear a little bit, but you don't see it being challenged within the people who should be questioning it. But yeah, so I don't feel much has changed. I think I think we're going through waves. I think, you know, the time when we had a legalization of civil partnerships, gay marriage, repealing Section 28, all these kind of things, you know, we were heading in quite a good direction, but obviously the world decided to take a different turn, you know. So yeah, no, I don't think it has got any better.
No, same. Well, hopefully we will see a shift at some point. We need to,
I
right?
hope so.
It needs to happen.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes I tell myself, sorry, that it's like a last cry of this very, very bigoted groups. They are minorities. They're just very loud, really very well funded. Yeah, and I think that works against us. But then we have community, and I think that's the most important thing we have to remind ourselves. So for sure,
the pendulum will swing at some point. It
will.
Yeah. I want to come back to, you know, the insular experience that was your teenage years, and ask you, when did that shift?
It started shifting probably when I properly came out. I mean, uni was phenomenal. Like, I enjoyed it. I kind of found people. I did French and geography.
What was the goal at that point?
I always think back and I just laugh. I was like, I'm so foolish. I was like, I wanted to get a job in the NGO. I saw my future working in the UN somewhere. I said, I'm going to be in Geneva. I'm going to be in New York. I'm going to be doing something. I'm going to be some sort of Angelina Jolie. Or I don't know what the hell I had in my head, but that was what I thought. And French and geography was going to get me there. And then I'm going to intern at the UN, and my life's set for me. So that's what I did. And I really enjoyed studying and being in that academic bubble. It's such a lovely bubble, but it doesn't prepare you for real life. So I found my people. I found lots of lovely people to kind of, you know, just be myself again, because I felt like, you know, teenage years in secondary school just didn't really have the opportunity to do that. But we're still very much scarred with the kind of, I just didn't feel comfortable with my sexuality at all. And I felt that that kind of negotiating different versions of me stopped me from really being comfortable with who I was and getting my voice, getting that to where I needed it to be, to where it is now. So, so as much as it was a good time for me, it really didn't really manifest until I came out in my sort of about 24, 25. So once I did that, I just think it was the biggest kind of release of stress or strain for myself, and just realized that actually I catastrophized a bit of it. I mean, some of it was rightly so, you know, because it wasn't easy. I kind of just convinced myself that I can't really come out until I know I've got like financial and social and emotional autonomy and stability. If any of those I can't, you know, like if any of those is not there, then I'm not going to be able to get through this. So, yeah, I think when I got to about 24, 25, I just felt like, well, I have to, I just can't. There's too many conversations about work, about relationships and things and all of that. And there was one boss that I had, and I love her, and I'm obviously still in touch with her. And she pulled me aside once, and she just asked me. She goes, "Look, she's LGBT as well," and she just said, "Are you?" She goes, "It's none of my business," but she goes, I just see this conflict in you, and I just want to know, but just know it's so safe with me." And I said, "Yes, I am." And then she just helped me so much just by vocalizing that. And then unfortunately quite soon after, my mum passed away, but then quite some time after that we kind of revisited it, and she was always this kind of forceful person, which I love about her. And she just said, are you gonna start dating? Are you gonna start doing anything? Do you want to? And I said, well, I do. And I was just doing this procrastination. And then she said, well, right. And I knew she would never do this, but she said, if you don't create a profile or something, I'm gonna do it, whether you like it or not. And I was like, all right, I'll do it. And I remember because it was the Olympics, and so I don't know, in my head, I was just like, I'll just do it until, like, for the duration of summer. Like, I'll use the Olympics as my sort of time frame of this, and then I'll just get rid of my my profile. And so I did that, and I think just doing all of that it just helped so much, and it was just a really fun journey. And actually, that's when I met my partner, who I'm still with today. So
I love that.
yeah.
That's awesome. And what was her name, and are you still in touch?
Yes, I am. Her name's Vicky Ridley Pearson, and we're still in touch, and I love her to pieces.
That's
so
so
yeah.
beautiful. That's so beautiful. I guess I'd love to know, what did early career look like? Kind of having that big dream of going to the UN and working in an NGO. What did early career look like, and what was the moment that you found your destination or path in inclusion?
So very early, so when I came out of uni, I obviously just had to go into temping because I already had planned to go and intern at an NGO in Indonesia. So I'd found this company, and when I look back, it's like it was just a big scam. But basically, I had to pay this company. They sorted out this volunteer thing for me, but I'd already had to pay them like 1,500 or 2,000, which was obviously back in 2008. It's like, what the hell are you doing? But it's like, I so needed to do this because this was my path to the UN. So to be able to pay that off, and for my time in Indonesia, I temped as a HR assistant. And when I say that uni did not prepare me for the real world, that job, in the 3 months that I worked to make the money to go to Indonesia, I learned so much about being an adult in the real world more than anything. I think in my first week, on my first day, I got shouted at because I asked someone where the printer was, and I just got this very, very odd reaction from the person because they were having an issue with something else, and they decided to take it out on me. And then my boss at the time was openly telling me that her family were BNP, so British National Party supporters, and our office looked out over the rest of the office, and she looked out at finance, and she goes, "Do you think they go to a black job agency because they're all black, aren't they?" And I'm just like, that this doesn't exist. And because I'd just been in this bubble, I was just like, is this for real? Is this what happens? Is this the conversations that grown adults are having? And I remember just having so many moments with her where I just get so angry because she just had this very anti-Islamic views, obviously anti-everyone views, and it just was that was my introduction to trying to get on the career ladder. I was just like, what is this, like, get me to Indonesia already. So went to Indonesia, did my year there, which was phenomenal, but it really was sobering in terms of, or humbling I should say, sorry, in terms of understanding like where you stand in all of this, and that your career in the UN is not really going to happen. The NGO world is very incestuous. It's very much focused on who you know, rather than anything else. What you've got to offer doesn't count. And there were so many UN events that we went to because we were sponsored by so many different aid agencies, US Aid, Australia Aid, in this organization that I was working at. So we went to a lot of these UN events, and there'll be ambassadors that would be there, and it was just really uncomfortable conversations a lot of the time. I remember with the US ambassador at the time, just couldn't get through his head that I was from the UK. He kept asking, like, what do my parents do? And, like, he goes, oh, your parents diplomats in the UK. And, is that why you've got, a British accent? And I was like, well, no, my parents are nurses. And I grew up in the UK. And then it was just this kind of, just this look of disappointment. And it was just the kind of thing where your dream is just turning to dust in front of you. But it was good for that reason. But I came back feeling quite defeated, but still trying to get in. So I did a lot of volunteering at different charities, because a lot of the jobs that I wanted to do, which was in research and public administration and public policy, they weren't looking for them because of the financial crisis. A lot of charities were just looking for fundraisers, and I was like, well, I don't have fundraising experience, and it's nothing that I can pick up. So I fell into temping again. I went back, believe it or not, to the job that I said I would never go back to, but it was only because a different department had a vacancy and I needed a job. So went back there and worked in the HR department, and then that's when I met this boss, Vicky. She liked a recruitment round that I was doing for her. She liked the fact that I did fancy spreadsheets and was, just good at getting things done. And she just asked me, would I like a job in her team, because they've got a vacancy that's gone out to agency. And so I moved over, and she just kind of set me on my path to kind of work in project management. And from then I just kind of moved from job to job, worked in regulators and other NHS organisations, very much in the public sector, in project management. And it wasn't really until I got to local government in 2017, I worked for Sussex Council, where I was in transformation. And I think that's where the world that I'm living now probably started, because it was my ability to be a project manager, but at the same time work with change and taking people on a journey. But in order to understand that journey, you need to understand the people, and you need to understand who they are, what they want. And so it was really, for me, that kind of eye-opening moment of, oh my God, I'm allowed to have these conversations with people. I'm allowed to ask their feelings, and I'm allowed to ask that they might not like something because it's not done in the right place, or they're scarred from previous ways that we've done projects, before. So it really positioned me in that world of being able to do things for the right reasons and doing things in the right way. It might not be the easiest way to do it, but I was in a team where we can do the complicated project management or the delivery to do the best thing for residents and services and things. So that was kind of where I flourished, and I was so happy. And then the opportunity came up to recommence the LGBTQ plus staff network, and I put myself forward. I said, look, I can help start this up. It doesn't necessarily mean I need to be chair, but I really, really want to start this up. Put a survey out to find out what people wanted, and then just kind of kickstarted the staff network, and working alongside the other staff networks, the women's network, the people of colour network, and the neurodivergent and disability networks. It just opened that door to EDI, which I then stepped into within that job. Kind of that became part of my portfolio, and then that just is what kind of carried me through other jobs. I kind of went with that kind of transformation. I changed things, including workforce culture, which then revolves around EDI, and just kind of felt like that's my happy place with project management and change, and so I did that for a while. And then just because of, I don't know, maybe I'm going into too much detail, but when you get to very senior positions, which I was on this kind of very linear career ladder that people told me that's what you need to do, just become a head of service, assistant director, CEO, that should be your path. And I was like, yeah, fine, that might be my path. I'll just go through with this. So got to some organizations in quite senior positions, thinking that I can bring that authentic, empathetic way of working and representing the workforce. And that's when, when I alluded to at the beginning about showing that mirror, you're not really allowed to do that in a job where you're expected to make changes for the best in the workforce. And it's like, I just felt there was too much conflict in two jobs in particular. And so I took that step back and said, I'm just going to go into consultancy and do it from the outside and shine that mirror in. And so, yeah, but thankfully I'm in a job where I can kind of do all of that quite comfortably back in the NHS. So yeah, it's been a journey.
It's been a journey, and it's interesting that you talk about taking people on a journey, because I think events curation and delivery is very similar to project management, in that you need to understand who the audience are and the story you're trying to tell and the journey you're trying to take them on. Our journeys are so similar in starting with staff networks, and that being kind of like the
amazing
linchpin of who we are now. I wonder if that experience of being able to have those conversations provided you with some kind of maybe relief or healing from having to be so insular and hidden for so long.
Without a doubt. I think it was almost like catching up with lost time and healing as well. I think it was very much, I felt I had a duty to do it as much for the communities that I love as much for myself. I think it was so important. So yeah, I believe that.
Yeah, it's beautiful. Looking back so far, what are you most proud of to date?
I think where I am now, I think the thing I'm proud about is I don't believe that I've compromised who I am and what I stand for at all. There's moments where I've learned because I've maybe towed the line with some sort of status quo, but then realized, actually, what the hell am I doing? And then brought myself back to who I am. And I think that's it. And I think every time I've had those moments, I've kind of doubled down on absolutely not. And okay, this is another thing that goes into my little rucksack of life, like to make sure that I don't compromise who I am. And so I think having a strong sense of who I am is probably what I think I'm most proud of. I feel for me, I haven't really compromised. I'm still the big loudmouth that just wants everyone to thrive.
The House of Happiness is London's ultimate sober clubbing extravaganza. We're led and delivered but created for all, whether teetotal, sober curious, or just taking a booze snooze. We love a day rave, and on a Saturday afternoon you can expect banging house tunes, DJs on decks, dancers on podiums, and a fully stocked alcohol-free bar. Flamboyant, bold, with a glitter station to boot. We're all about safe, inclusive fun, and we even have a pre-meet so that you can make new sober buddies before you hit the dance floor. Grab your tickets from Instagram now at House of Happiness Official, and we'll see you on the dance floor. Are you ready for some quickfire questions?
Yeah, let's do it.
What album, book, or movie has had a lasting impact on you?
So for me, it's movie, and it's really naff because there's probably lots of people who say this is a good one, but Spirited Away was from Studio Ghibli. It's Japanese animation.
I saw your toy behind. I saw your
face. Is my favorite character. I love it. For some reason, the nostalgic reasons, I obviously downloaded it illegally on torrents when I was young, when internet was so bloody slow, so it took hours to download. I think it was done around 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning. I was waiting for it to finish, and then I started watching it then, so I was probably half asleep anyway when I was watching it. But it's just mesmerizing because when it's such a beautifully animated cartoon, the musical score is just so beautiful. So I just love it for that, but also the story itself. I think there's so much that resonated with me without me realizing then, quite young, that it's about being on the outside, being different, and not wanting to conform, and just something about there's a whole thing about identity and being quite fluid with your identity throughout Spirited Away, that when I look back at it and when I watch it now, I watch it through that lens. But when I think back to that, I don't know, 13, 14-year-old who was watching it on, in his dining room, just kind of propped up on a whole load of chairs at like 4 o'clock in the morning and watching it, I just think, wow, because that was nourishing you and you didn't realize, and it was kind of feeding you so many signs and you didn't see it. So for me, yeah, definitely Spirited Away.
Beautiful. Beautiful. It's a great film. What's the saying you live by and one that you put in the bin?
So I thought about one. There's one really stupid one that, in terms of what I live by, my grandmother used to tell me, "Don't trust anyone with a top lip." But and I think that's become quite true in my life. But anyway, let's put that to one side.
Don't trust anyone with a top lip.
Without a top lip.
Without
so
a
she's
top
saying
lip.
like, yeah. So I'm just
That is
like, whenever
hilarious.
I know, but yeah, I don't live by that. But whenever I think back to who's pissed me off most in my life, yeah, there is a top lip. Missing. No, but seriously, the one that I live by, it's not necessarily a quote or anything, but I remember reading Amin Malouf, and he's a Lebanese French writer, and he just talks about identity, and he's very much about identity politics. And it resonated with me because he's so many different identities, and he spoke about the fact that the moment you make one more important than the other, that's when you create factions, and that's when you create fundamentalism and radicalism around certain things. And I had to look back to see if there was a quote, and there is one. And he said that what makes me myself rather than anyone else is the fact that I am poised between two countries, 2 or 3 languages, and several cultural traditions. It's precisely this that defines my identity. Would I exist more authentically if I cut off a part of myself? And I think that just, for me, it just kind of just spelled out for me that there's just so much about who I am that makes me unique, because of all of these different identities is a recipe of what makes me me. And I think that's the same with everyone. And no one part of your identity should be more important than the other. And I think yeah, it's always like the book that I read of his, which I think is called In the Name of Identity, is just an incredible read, because it's so relevant today. And in the bin,
yeah.
I always grew up with, my dad always told me, I do love my dad. I'm being quite critical of my dad in this, but he's the stoic Pakistani man. So obviously there's so many things that he says where you just roll your eyes. But when you're young, you live by it because you think it's the right thing. And I lived with this for most of my professional life until I thought, you know what? No, there's something very toxic about this. And he always told me, make sure that you're always 2 steps ahead of white people. Make sure that you are always more successful, that you are always more prepared and everything, because he said you will fail, that your life can be destroyed so easily. And he would always paint it in that lens of it. And I used to be like, okay, yeah. So that means I need to do well at school. I need to do, succeed and just make sure that I'm always good, because someone's going to catch up with me and ruin my life. And so, but then it's just like, no, I don't need to be 2 steps. I can be 2 steps behind. I can be facing the wrong way. I could be going in a different direction. Like, I don't need to kind of go or live by any of this. And so for me, it's kind of looking at it in a different lens now. I would never give anyone that advice at all. So yeah.
It sounds like over the years you've kind of been able to shift a lot of the pressure that you have either experienced or that's been placed on you.
Yeah, absolutely. I think so. I'm very comfortable with it now. So yeah. But in the past, not at all.
What's been the best adventure of your life so far?
I would say, because I was thinking, is there a particular thing that I did? But actually, I settled on just queerness. For me, like the whole adventure of being queer from coming out, I think obviously I've said that was the biggest sort of release of stress, but I feel like it opened up the universe to me. Like, it brought me, obviously my partner, but it introduced me to a beautiful community that I had kind of put in a box away, because it was like, that's never going to be my life. But it brought me to Pride in Education. It brought all these wonderful queer people into my life, and it was almost like that big last piece of the jigsaw of who I am authentically, was put in place, and just set me off on a life that I could feel that I'm not having to negotiate different versions of myself, like explicitly. There's obviously times where you're having to do a few different things, but in for the most part, like, I think for me, it was only when I came out and really embraced queerness and comfortably, and sit that alongside me and who I am. Yeah, I'm loving it.
So you wouldn't change it for the world?
Nope, not at all.
What 3 words would you use to describe you and your origin story?
I'd say live, laugh, love. But no, not that.
It's come up before. Don't joke, it's come up before by accident.
That's it.
Someone was like, actually, scrap that, I'll come back to you.
Sorry. I guess for me, so I guess if I think about the start of it, it's sort of that curiosity, that
Mm.
inquisitiveness, that curiosity. I think for me, about talking about what brings me joy, it's intimacy. It's having close relationships with people. It's all those good meals and good conversations with good people. So it's intimacy, and then just coming back to the identity of queerness being that last bit that really unlocked the rest of my life for me. So yeah, I'd say it's those three words really.
Curiosity, intimacy, queerness.
Yeah.
Let's fast forward a little bit. What exciting things do you have coming up?
So obviously the rest of the pilot that I'm working on. So we're
Yeah.
in full swing with so many different things. And when I say it's exciting, it really is. And hopefully, we'll hear so much more. I mean, the HIV plan for England came out in December, and that is just one good thing that this government is doing is its action plan on HIV. And I think being able to play into that, like there's so many different things that we're doing, like digital PrEP, introduction of injectable PrEP, bundling conversations into people from very vulnerable backgrounds, so lots of different work streams supporting commercial sex workers, homeless people who are seeking asylum, refugees, newly arrived migrants, and so really embedding conversations and just trying to smash down that taboo that people have, but doing it in a really sensitive and supportive way, and not one that it makes people feel like they're being interrogated. And it's just all about us taking control of our health, and that does mean for some of us having conversations about HIV prevention. So really loving where we are. We're in obviously full swing now, so that's going to be the rest of my year. Again, we're ramping up in Pride in Education. We have an open letter that so many people, including yourself, Neil, has signed. It's a letter to the Department for Education to take away the confusing and contradictory information that's in there for the 2026 Relationship, Health and Education and Sex Education guidance, especially around gender identity, around trans and non-binary people. And we're trying to make sure that the information that's in there is actually supportive and not contradictory and alienating, that could just feel like we are going into another Section 28, where we won't be able to talk about gender identity without prefacing it with so many different things. That just means that the default for schools will be, we just won't talk about it. So seeing that campaign through with Pride in Education, we're ramping it up. We've got some exciting things coming up with where the campaign has gone between myself, Lila, and Emma, who's the other volunteer director. So exciting times with that. And then I have lots of unrefined plans in my head that probably won't come to fruition this year because there's so much going on, and I'm a serial procrastinator. So we'll see. Hopefully by 2027 there'll be some other things that I'll be working on through just the consultancy work that I do. So yeah.
Super exciting. I always love seeing what Pride in Education are turning out like. Fantastic events. I'm going to ask what brings you joy. Obviously, your two fur babies, queerness, community.
Yes. Yeah. Oh, yeah. All of that, and obviously, like I said, just when I come back to that intimacy side of things, it's good company and seeing other people's joy, seeing people thrive. I think that just makes me so happy. I think that's the most kind of cases where I get so much joy. I get joy in community, like when I'm feeling really just downbeaten by everything going on, like even going on the march for Palestine or anything. It's as sad and heartbreaking as it is that we're having to march, it's so re-energizing to remind yourself that there is community out there. So yeah. I think that brings me so much joy.
Absolutely. Practical takeaway question for you. What advice do you have listening for anyone wanting to carve out a career in inclusion?
I had to not write don't. I was like, don't do it. But no, but to be honest, no, it's if you're going to do it, I think number one is don't go in thinking that you can change the world. Don't go in with that. Like it's an organization, and what counts are the moments that you have with people. So changing the opinion of one or two people of a department of working with a particular issue within an organization is still making such big impacts in how an organization operates and how the world operates, and taking people on a journey, understanding that the journey is not linear and it's not a quick one. It takes time. It's meaningful. We said you have to focus on the discomfort and you have to be ready ready with the skills to look after people in that discomfort, because in that discomfort people will blame each other, will end projects because they just don't think that it's worth pursuing because everyone is pissed off with everyone. And I think, no, actually that's where you get the greatest outcomes, I think, sometimes. And I think it's just look for the warning signs in an organization. I think if an organization is very prescriptive about their inclusion and it almost looks like a tick box, then they are a bit of a tick box organization. And I would question whether you would want to put yourself through being in an organization that potentially could be quite toxic for you and actually be quite de-skilling of someone who's quite bright-eyed about going into a career in inclusion.
My final question for you is this. Do you have any words of encouragement or wisdom for anyone out there to help them get to wherever they're going?
I think number one is you're not on your own. Focus on community. And like I said before, I think, like this kind of thing that we all graft, we all worked hard, we all did it all by ourselves and everything. It's just all a lie. Like, come on, like I don't care about that. I need to rely on people. I need to ask many people many things. I mean, in a lot of cases, I go to Lila and I just ask her, does she know so-and-so? Can she help me with someone? And she just opens her infinite book and she just like links you in with someone. But I mean, outside of all of that, obviously I have so many different people that I link with. And I think it's focusing on community. I think is important. We rely on each other. We keep each other safe. We shouldn't do anything in isolation. I think in all of this, for me, it's don't lose and don't compromise who you are. Have a soft heart. Like, remember your heart's soft, and especially as you move into positions of authority, there are so many people that want you to conform or bend to particular ways of working, and that's when you do see people that you just look at. Like I look at, to be blunt, many MPs of colour in the cabinet right now, and when I look at them, I just think, 10 years ago, you were tweeting against Trump. You were tweeting in support of Palestine. And look where you are now. And look what you stand for. Look who you've bended to. And I just think, you've lost that soft heart. You've forgotten your history and everything. So I think it's so important to never lose who you are. And so yeah. I think those are the main two. I think
such
for me.
Beautiful words to close on. Cam, I've loved spending this time with you, and I really feel your sense of community, like knowing each other from afar, but you're always so supportive, and I can really feel how important this is to you. And so thank you for your soft heart, your spirit of community, and everything you do.
Thank you, Neil, and I feel exactly the same way about you. So thank you for everything you do as well, and thank you for inviting me on this.
Pleasure. Let's get a fur baby date in soon.
Yep. Yes, please.
Cool. See you soon. Take care.
Take care.